Welcome to another episode of Aliyah Money Talks. Since moving to Israel, I have had the opportunity to learn from so many different people along the way. Been here for about a decade, over a decade, and I think we all can learn from each other. So I'm going to be trying to release a lot more of these conversations with different Olim from all kinds of different experiences and different backgrounds and different skill set. And I think we can all really learn from each other. So definitely encourage you to subscribe on YouTube channel, on the website. I think you're going to enjoy these shows, and I think you're going to learn a lot. So with that, I'm very excited to introduce Leora Hershman, who's today's guest. Leora made Aliyah about 9 years ago and works for a startup, a fintech startup in Herzliya. Leora, why don't you start us off and tell us about yourself and about your Aliyah journey?
Hi, Aaron. Great to be here. First time on a podcast, so we'll see how it goes. So about my Aliyah journey, it's been a pretty long journey. I'm almost here a decade like you. And I came from Boston. I made Aliyah with Nefesh B'Nefesh and went to the army with Garin Sabar. Was a great experience. It was something called Olima Madim, and it was a hand-holding process. It was a very easy and nice, transition into the army, which was not an easy experience. And in the army, I was a Madrichat Tzarel. I worked with volunteers from abroad who came to volunteer in the army, in the IDF. And after that, I, was trying to find my place. It's not like in America where you go straight to college, you can study liberal arts and find your way. So I tried a few degrees. And along the way, found myself struggling a lot. Well, I didn't know I was struggling until I was in minus in my bank account and couldn't pay my friends back for the Vad Bayit or whatever bills there were. And I kind of reached a bottom where I said, I need to reevaluate what I'm doing. And so I, started realizing that I need to learn about managing money.
So would you say that's the catalyst that got you into learning about personal finance, learning about investing? I mean, one of the reasons.
Definitely not.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think that having the crisis led me at all to be interested in personal finance, but it definitely made me reevaluate and say, this cannot go on how it's going. And it definitely made me start evaluating how I'm spending. And when I started working, I started thinking about the value of money. And when I went out to eat during my lunch break and the meal was more expensive than my hourly wage, that started getting me thinking. And it was a long process until I started actually being interested in finance, because let's be honest, who's really interested in finance, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenging subject for many. I would say I'm interested in finance, and I think you're interested in finance.
I'm interested in finance, but
most are not.
If we talk to anyone walking down the street, you're going to say, so what do you think of finance? They're going to say it's a snore.
Right. So as you started, we spoke a little bit before this about your article that you wrote, and I'm going to link to that article in the show notes. But about different challenges that you ran into once you started going down this. I want to earn more for my money. I want to start investing. I want to start getting more control over, having my money work for me rather than working for my money. What kind of were some of the hurdles that you ran into? What were the challenges that looking around Israel and trying to get help, trying to figure out what's step one? What did you run into?
So first of all, when I started wanting to invest, I had started working 70% job during my degree. I was studying finance. Everything was kind of clicking. I'd learned about compounding in school, and I just said, letting the money just sit in my bank account and the value not to change at all, and even like to be losing value because of inflation, I was like, I need to take control of this, and I really wanted to start investing. And so I actually turned to like Nefesh B'Nefesh. I was looking on their website trying to figure out what to do. I reached out to some of the recommended firms, and none of them could manage my money because I didn't have a lot. And I just wanted to get started. And like, I thought the way to get started is to have someone manage it for you. I'll just give it to them and they'll manage it. And even though I was studying finance, right, I said, that's what I should do. Like, they're professionals. I wanted to grow, I'll just give it to them. But there was no option to do that. No one was willing to talk to me. It was very discouraging. And so then I talked to my family. I talked to my dad. I talked to my uncle, and I tried to figure out, like, could I do this on my own? And I was actually, I think, the first person in my class at IDC or Reichman University in the finance class to actually open up a Schwab self-directed brokerage account. And I talked to my dad about it, and like he said, here's a good site to look up ETFs. I built myself an ETF portfolio. I talked to some of my friends in finance. I was like, what do you think of my portfolio? And then I just started investing. Like, I put in, I moved the money into the account, which was easy for me because I had some money in the States. So I moved some of the money into the account, and then I just chose the funds, and I started contributing every month or so to start investing. It's called dollar cost averaging. If you invest every month, it's
So basically, when you were getting stuck, trying to reach out, have somebody help you do this, you kind of weren't getting anywhere, and you decided to kind of get your feet wet and really start learning this stuff on your own, reading lots of articles. What how did you figure this out?
So the first, the websites that I used for finding ETFs were The Street and Forbes. And in terms of learning how to invest, honestly, like everything I didn't know or I learned about and wanted to like learn more, understand the practical meaning, I just looked up on Investopedia. And because I understand how finance works, like it was helpful. I don't know if someone not coming from that world would be able to understand that. But I basically, I encountered all of these issues. There's this PFIC issue for Americans. I don't want to go into it in depth, but there are tax issues that, it's just a shame. Like, I wanted to put all my money in a Kupat Gemel Hashka'a, right? A great retirement account that people who aren't U.S. citizens, Olim Chadashim everywhere, should look into it, Kupat Gemel or Kupat Gemel Hashka'a. Be careful of the fees, but it's a great option, and you can just put your money in there, and it can be managed and have tax advantages when you retire. But Americans, they can do it, but when they take the money out, currently the tax is almost 50%. And so it's crazy. And if I had done that, it would have been a big issue. My accountant would have charged me a lot of money to figure it out. And so I think that, from the Facebook groups, I kind of saw that the PFIX thing was an issue. I read a bunch of articles. And after doing so much research, I I knew for myself what to do, but other people don't.
So it's basically us Americans, you think, who have the hardest challenge. Obviously, everybody's got a challenge, right? Everybody's got a challenge to get motivated and to be interested in, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But as far as getting started, what options you have, Americans definitely have some limitations, and that's kind of what
I would say that Americans have a lot of limitations they don't know, they're not familiar with, and that a lot of them, they either don't know that they need to be paying taxes from the first shekel that they earn in Israel. They need to be filing taxes, not paying taxes, but filing taxes, and that they can't be, investing in normal investment vehicles in Israel, that a lot of them are very good and have tax advantages.
Great. So let's try and get into a little bit of some of the specifics for people watching this that kind of want to know how they can do this on their own and feel comfortable doing it. So first of all, let's talk about fear, because I think right now, specifically in the markets, in general, there's a lot of fear around investing, and understandably, it's scary, and there's a lot to talk about in that. How do you, as somebody without a professional manager to sit down with you and go over everything with, as a do-it-yourself investor, how do you cope with fear, and how do you kind of handle it in terms of your investments?
So I would say that you have to be a certain type of person to naturally not be afraid of these things, right? And I don't think most people have it. I think it's a skill, right? So I think for me, it's been like learning how to detach myself from the emotional aspect of money, because in most cases, it doesn't help us, right? If, like, my brother, for instance, he is worried about investing, afraid of investing, because he is worried about all the hard work he's done and all the money that he's saved up. He's worried about that getting lost. And I was listening to another podcast from financial advisors, and they were talking about their clients, and they were saying that their clients wanted to take their money out of the market because they thought that their 10 years of contributions to their retirement account had been wiped out, and they thought they were going to have to work for 10 more years because of that.
To make it up, right.
To make it up. And they didn't understand that the market fluctuates, and that if you leave the money in, the money can go back up, because the market, it has a upwards trajectory, and the dips in the market, they can be scary and they can be sharp, but usually the recovery is very quick after, and a lot of people will miss it, right? You'll say you're in a market dip or a recession. The stock market will keep going down for a while, and then suddenly there will be some news, and the investors will pile in and start buying again, right? And there'll be a sharp rise in the stock market. And if you're not in the market at the time, you're going to miss that. And so if you took your money out at the lowest point, right, and then you miss it, you're going to put it back in the highest point. Right. And then, like, that's how you lose money, by selling low and then buying back in when you're not afraid anymore. That's the biggest issue. And I think that if people understand that as long as they're not selling, they didn't lose, right? You didn't lose 10 years of contributions to your retirement account unless you really did sell at the lowest point, right? If you sold when everyone was fearful, right, then you are losing money, and right. you would have to work another 10 years. But if you understand that it's going to go back up, first of all, you can detach yourself and say, yes, it looks scary. Yes, the value has gone down, but it doesn't mean that it's going to stay like that. And I think that's what people have to understand.
Yeah. So just to summarize, I guess, your main approach in terms of dealing with fear seems to be to educate yourself, to really spend time understanding what's happening, and not about the financial news, which again, their job is to obviously sell news and sell scary things. That's how they make money. But to educate yourself about how things actually work, what historical things we can leverage to learn about and to reference and to kind of look past what we're experiencing right now. Is that
Definitely.
kind of, yeah?
Definitely. I mean, I think that something you mentioned is really interesting. The news and what you see on social media, right? Someone talked to me from work, and they said, I saw on your on your Instagram that you're talking about the market dip, and you're talking about how to set yourself up in case of a recession, and I'm worried about my kupat gemel hashka'a, right? I'm worried, like that's all my hard-earned money, and that's my savings, and it's there. I'm worried. Should I be doing anything? And I said, I can't advise you, right? I'm not an investment advisor, but I said, like, let me write about it. All of the articles that I've written, the first one about the taxes, it was because one of my friends wanted to open Kupat Gemel L'Hashka'a. She was American. I was like, I could try to explain it to her, but I have all of this information. Why don't I just put it down in a simple way? Same thing with the fear in the market. One of my friends, she asked me, she was scared because the headlines are meant to scare you, like you said. And so people shouldn't be looking at the headlines. They shouldn't be basing their decisions or getting too excited or worried about things they see on social media. They really need to, get educated and understand that headlines make people do silly things with investments.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, how do you think most people our age view the stock market, view investing? Do you think most people just ignore it and don't understand it? Do you think, most people think it's important, but it's too scary to touch? What do you think your experience is from talking to your friends?
That's a really good question. I think that a lot of my friends don't, unfortunately, they don't know anything about the stock market. They don't understand how it works. And because they don't understand the basics of how it works, which, if you're not going to be working in it professionally or a day trader, right, you don't need to understand so many aspects of the stock market. If you're going to invest in index funds, in ETFs or something, you need to understand the basics of, asset allocation, risk profiles, time horizon, right? You don't need to understand why is the ETF or why is the S&P going down today, right? You don't need to understand that. You need to understand that investing for the long term, all you need to be doing is picking some index funds and either not touching it or setting up some type of automatic way for you to transfer the money in every month, or signing up with a robo-advisor, which we actually talked about. It could be actually a problem for
there's different complications,
U.S. citizens living in Israel.
Right. So without to get too technical there, but let's say, like you're saying, I'm a young investor. I got a good high tech career. I'm getting a very decent salary. I'm contributing to my pension. I've got a Keren Ishtalmut that is being contributed to as well. But at the end of the day, I'm spending less than I'm earning. And I want, I know investing is important. I want to put some more aside. I'm an American in Israel. What do I do? What's kind of step one? Is it education? Is it, get your feet wet and start figuring out what would be your step one advice for a friend like that?
Well, I think you need to understand yourself. There are some people that are scared of the stock market, right? And so if you're scared, you need to learn about it first, because if you don't learn about it first, you're going to be pulling out the money when you're scared, and we don't want that. If if you think that you have the you can manage if your investments go down a certain amount and it's not going to bother you, then I think you really just need to get started and open up a self-directed brokerage account at an at a U.S. brokerage firm. The ones that I've seen are good for U.S. citizens in Israel are Schwab and TD
right.
Ameritrade are good, right? But you can't actually transfer directly from your Israeli bank account. And I love their interface, but I had to open up an Interactive Brokers account so I could transfer every month or every other month into the account easily. I don't love their interface, but if you you want to have that, if you have your money in Israel, really it's the best option, because using a transfer company costs money, and transferring, think about it, like even if you still pay fees at your bank, right? Like paying a shekel 65 to transfer into the Interactive Broker account, and then to just transfer the shekel to dollar for free at the whatever market rate it is at the time. That is really convenient, and something that I think a lot of people here, they struggle with. Like, how do I get the money into dollars? How do I get it into my brokerage account? And so it really makes things easier. Although I would say it's not ideal because it's not super user friendly.
Okay.
But think about it.
Without getting into the details of each brokerage, which can be a bit confusing, complicated, and there's hopefully going to be more resources for understanding that. Basically, step one, you think, is people who are comfortable with a small sum of money getting started should open a brokerage account and start investing. And that's...
I would say though that a lot of people they would make the mistake of opening the brokerage account and just throwing it all in, right? And putting it all in at one time. I would say that even though it takes a bit more energy and putting 5-10 minutes aside every month, if you don't have it automated, then I would say that it's really important to not put all the money in at one time, but really to do it every month or every other month, so you get that advantage of the dollar cost averaging.
Okay, interesting strategy. Also helpful probably on a psychological level for people just starting to learn to be able to, kind of gauge how they're transferring money and not feel like they're just throwing it in blindly, but as their education and they learn more, they can really feel more comfortable transferring more and saving more. So I guess on the flip side, the main question, and something we've discussed, is how about all the other people that aren't interested in investing? They look at retirement as this distant future thing they don't have to worry about. They feel like, listen, I'm earning now, I'm going to spend the money now. I don't have time or energy to deal with investing, to deal with getting my finances in order, to work on a budget. I know I'm earning well. Different people that we talk to like this. How do we get them to be less apathetic, and how do we get people to be more interested in taking charge of their financial future?
Well, I mean, I really wish I had a good solution. I think that people need to understand the power of compounding, and you can see in the article I wrote about not panicking when there are market dips. You can see that chart showing that if you start when you're younger, the amount of money that you can have when you retire is so much greater than if you start 5 or 10 years later, right? Because of the power of compounding. Like there's an exponential curve. Like it's not it's not like people like talking about crypto and saying, yeah, you could earn this much in a month and then whatever. It's really it's something that's a foundation of investing, that the money compounds, and that if you start earlier, it's so much more powerful, and you can have so much more money when you retire. I think that's the main thing that would get people to actually get started, to understand that they need to start now. Like, even if they're contributing less each month, if they're starting now, instead of waiting until they feel comfortable and they, feel like they're adults, or they, have bought a nice car, or they bought their first house, right? It's not worth it to wait. I think that would be the takeaway. It's not worth it to wait to start investing. It's really important to start investing now to take advantage of the compounding. So you have to contribute less.
Yeah. So I think that's a perfect note to end on. I think that's a really, really great point. Leora, tell us more about where we can read your articles. I know you have some future articles planned, and where we can follow more of your work.
So you can follow me on
We'll
Leah.
link it, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, Erin's great with all these things. Just look me up on Medium. If you want to follow me on social media, it's just my name, Leora Hershman. And anything you want in future articles, I'm really open to suggestions. The next article is really going to go into the practical details of, once you open up your brokerage account, what do you do? How do you start? It's not so hard, but if you don't know what to do, and a lot of the articles are not friendly for our age or people that want something simple, then that's what I'm going to write about in the next article. So
awesome. Look forward to seeing them, and thank you so much for being on the show. Have a great day.
You're welcome. Thanks, Erin.